All right, ladies and gentlemen, back again with another episode of Felons Talk. Unfortunately, I was kicked off of John's phone list. He's not allowed to call me anymore. Uh, we're not exactly sure what the purpose was. They're not telling him anything about why they did this. Uh, and so we don't really know. Okay. But we're trying to resolve it and get me back on his phone list. And hopefully we'll be able to do that in a couple of more weeks. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you about how I met John. First time I met John. I met John in Atlanta Federal Penitentiary way back in 1977. I'm thinking, no, maybe 78. Yeah, I think it was 78. John was called as a witness into a murder case that a guy named Steve Payton had been indicted for killing a guy named Ronnie Bell. And what happened was Steve Payton was a big weightlifter. And he had a homosexual by the name of Honore. Very feminine, like a trans type individual. And he met Honore in Leavenworth, and in addition to Honore uh, being gay, he was also a plug for heroin. He was serving time for uh, conspiracy to deliver heroin, large amounts of heroin, and his entire family was involved in the heroin business. I believe they're from Southern California. Anyway, Honore had the ability to call home and have heroin delivered through the mail anywhere she wanted to have it delivered. And when an inmate doesn't get a lot of visits, like if you're in Leavenworth and you have a drug connection and your family can't really, they're not going to just keep coming to Leavenworth from California every week to visit you. It just wouldn't be uh, feasible. What they would do is they'd find somebody that was getting regular visits that had family living close to Leavenworth, which is the Kansas City area of, you know, and they would mail the heroin to that person. It would already be ballooned up. They'd put it in balloons, double balloon it. They'd bring it into the visiting room, give it to whoever it was that they had chosen to swallow the drugs, and that person would bring it in. And that person would get like a third of the drugs, and the rest would go to Honore. So, in addition to using the drugs, they were selling the drugs. And Honore uh, had a problem with one of the guys that she'd sold some drugs to. I don't remember this guy's name right now because I wasn't in Leavenworth when this happened either. Um, but I do know the story. Uh, there was an incident where the guy got angry at either the quality of the drugs or something to do with the drugs and slapped the shit out of Honore. And in response to that, Steve Payton stabbed the guy to death and stuffed his body under a bed. Okay, they found the body. He got away with it pretty much, but people knew what had happened. Everybody knew what had happened. Um, and some people had snitched on him. Said, it's Honore and Steve Payton. Steve killed the guy. It was over the drugs, this and that. So they lock Steve and they lock Honore up. But there's not enough evidence for them to prosecute Steve. There's just nobody's testifying. Nobody's willing to testify. So they transferred Honore to from Leavenworth to Atlanta, and she put up and she she was doing her thing, and about 3 months later, they went ahead and transferred Steve to Atlanta. So now they're over in C Block in Atlanta, and they got the same thing going on that they always had in Leavenworth. She would have the drugs sent to people. Somebody would bring those drugs in through the visiting hall, give them, take a third, and give Honore and Steve the rest. And they had a good thing going, because heroin is the most sought after drug in prison. People love heroin, you know, they just do. And but it's also a dangerous drug because it brings out the dog in everybody. People are willing to kill for it. And if you listen to some of the stories, a lot of these murders that have happened have been in relationship to some heroin. Anyway, this guy named Ronnie Bell found out that Honore had the heroin, and Honore was in the shower. He ran up in the shower with a knife. He told Honore, "Let's go. Take me to your cell and get me that dope." Honore went down to the cell, gave him the dope, and he took off and went and shot the dope. Steve Payton comes back from he's a weightlifter. He's on the yard. He's weightlifting when this happened. Comes back, and he's finds out what happened, and he decides to kill the guy again. Another guy, same thing. Honore, heroin, problems, right? And he goes over to the guy's cell. The guy is nodding out on heroin. This is on the 5th tier, okay? He goes and gets a little chain link, like a chain link. And he comes back. Now, these cells were small. The length of the cell was the length of the bed and a toilet behind the bed. That was the entire length of the cell. And then next to the toilet was the sink. That's how big the cell was in length, and in width. You could put your hands on both walls. So it wasn't they're very tiny cells. And you used to be able to slide the door back and forth during the day because it wasn't deadlocked. But this guy had the cell. He had the bars closed. He pushed the door closed. Steve takes that little chain, he puts it around the bars at the bottom of the cell. He puts a padlock on it and clicks it shut, so the guy can't pull the door open anymore. He took flammable materials, which were available because some people were on the minimum security crew that would go out and cut the grass. So they had lawnmowers, so they could get gasoline. They also had paint thinner down in where they did the paint shop and everything. So there was flammable material available to anybody that wanted it. He throws the flammable material on the guy and sets him on fire. I was in D block. I could hear him screaming over there. I think that it was insane, man. That was the second time I've seen somebody get burned to death in a cell. The first time was in Lewisburg. It was a black guy got killed. He had stole a radio from another one of the black guys from D.C. And you don't want to play with these guys, you know. They're serious guys. And what they did was they jammed the lockbox so that the cop couldn't get his key in there to open the lockbox and open the door. The door was shut, and they threw a jar full of flammable material in the cell and lit it. And that was another ungodly scream. When you ever heard when somebody gets burned alive, there's the screams that there's no question that this person is in intense pain. You know he's being murdered. That's just the way it is. Anyway, they lock Steve up, and they want to. Everybody knows in the penitentiary what happened. Everybody talks. We all knew that the dude robbed Ronnie Bell. We all knew that he had robbed Honore for the drugs. We all, Steve's reputation is to kill anybody that fucks with Honore and stops the drugs from coming in, or steals the drugs, or in any way impedes the drugs, right? So everybody knew the whole story. The whole prison knew it. And what happens is people call witnesses from other prisons. This is what people do when they get a murder case. They call friends and people from other institutions as witnesses. And you might ask yourself, well, what could they be witness to? They weren't even in the institution when the murder happened. Okay. Well, they could say, for instance, yeah, I knew Ronnie Bell, and Ronnie said that he was going to kill so-and-so and this and that. And, they could just make up any kind of story they want. The bottom line is you're entitled to call witnesses. You're entitled to do that. It's very hard for the courts to deny you a witness. I mean, the courts would be impeding due process. Okay, so why would you call people who don't know anything? It's to get them out of the prison that they're in, to get them a court trip, to get them a chance to escape from custody while they're in transit. Everybody's got a handcuff key. There's nothing to getting out of them handcuffs. I'll be telling stories about people that have gotten out of handcuffs and committed and escaped while in transit. You'll hear stories about that here on this channel. But anyway, that's just one of the main reasons. So anyway, two of the people that he called for witnesses was John Greschner and Jive Roberts. And I happened to be in the hole at the same time that they came in because I had gotten busted with some marijuana. And that's where I first met John Greschner, because they wouldn't let him in population because he had come from the control unit in Marion, and so did Jive Roberts. They had both come from Marion control unit. So to make a long story short, they never got to testify in the case. What happened was there was a black guy named Pretty Willie. And Pretty Willie's job, his hustle in prison, he worked in the laundry, and he would pick up laundry contracts from people all over the institution. He would take their clothes, he would personally wash them and press them and bring them back. He'd get $10 a month from each customer. He had like 20 customers. They called him Pretty Willie because he was incredibly ugly. I mean, he really looked weird, man. Uh, his eyes were really far apart. Yeah, it was that's a long story, but anyway, Pretty Willie claimed that he saw Steve Payton. He said he came to pick up a laundry contract, and he claimed that he could look up and see Steve Payton throw gasoline into Ronnie Bell's cell and set him on fire. He claimed that he was an eyewitness to this murder, an eyewitness. Okay, now mind you, this is on the fifth tier. Have you ever seen an old penitentiary? The tiers are like they go up five stories, and there's a little catwalk in front of each tier, say maybe 3 feet wide, maybe 4 feet wide at the most. And that's what the tier is. The tier is 3, 4 feet wide. Well, in this case, not only was he on the fifth tier, but there was a screen that went from the second tier all the way up to the ceiling, the fifth tier. They brought the court brought the 12 jurors into D block, and they told them to stand with their backs against the wall and look up to see the fifth tier. And there was no way they could do it. Absolutely. They couldn't even see the fourth tier. If it happened on the fourth tier, it would have been impossible. Immediately, they threw the case out. Immediately. That's the second body that Steve Payton got away with murdering. Okay? And last I heard, Steve was out in Lompoc, California, and I guess from there he might have went home. Because I mean, this has been years and years ago. But I don't. He's probably about 80 years old if he's still alive. And that's the story of how I met John Greschner, and the story of about how Steve Payton got away with 2 murders for Honore and for the heroin that she was able to produce for him. And yeah. So tomorrow I'll be back with another edition of Felons Talk, and I'll be bringing John's cell partner on, and we're going to cut it up with him, see what he has to say, and we'll see you then. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.